Joachim was a solitary watchmaker, known in his small town for his unparalleled talent in restoring old clocks. His workshop was a refuge for those who wanted to keep time in order, but for Joachim, each tick-tock was a reminder of the things he couldn't fix in his own life. The silence of the workshop, interrupted only by the rhythmic sound of the clocks, was both a comfort and a torture. He had lived many years without great emotions, except for a regret that gnawed at him, the end of his relationship with Clara, the great love of his life. One day, while cleaning the storage room in his workshop, he found an old clock, different from any other he had ever seen. The wood was worn by time, but the intricate details in gold and silver still shone, even under the dust accumulated over decades. On the dial, instead of numbers, there were symbols he didn't recognize. Intrigued, he decided to restore it. As he disassembled the clock, he felt as if he was dealing with something more than just an object. There was a palpable energy emanating from its gears, something that made his heart race. In the middle of the night, after hours of meticulous work, Joachim finally wound the clock. The pendulum began to move, and with the first tick-tock, he felt a change in the air around him. Suddenly, the sound of the clocks in his workshop stopped. The silence was deafening. Joachim looked at the clock, and his eyes widened when he realized that time was not just stopped, it was moving backward. The hands were spinning in reverse, and the world around him seemed to dissolve into a vortex of light and shadows. When the whirlwind ceased, Joachim found himself in a younger version of his own workshop. The year was 1985. He had no doubt. The colors, the smells, even the sounds on the street outside were the same as 30 years ago. In shock, Joachim looked at his hands. They were young again, without the wrinkles he had acquired over the years. He was back in time. This can't be real, he murmured to himself, touching his face. As he tried to process what had happened, the door of the workshop opened, and Clara walked in. She was as beautiful as he remembered, with brown hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She looked surprised to see him.
Clara, Joachim,
are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Joachim, with a trembling voice. Clara, is it really you? I thought I'd never see you again. Clara frowned, confused. What do you mean by that? I was here yesterday. What's going on? Joachim realized he was in a moment before their breakup. He had a chance to correct the mistake that had ruined his life. He decided right then that he wouldn't let Clara go this time. Joachim, Clara, I need to tell you something. Something I never had the courage to admit before. I love you, and I never should have let you go. Clara was silent for a moment, processing his words. She seemed touched, but also hesitant. Clara, Joachim, you know I love you too. But what happened between us? It wasn't just a lack of words. It was the choices we made, the priorities we placed ahead of our love. Joachim, desperate. I know. I made a mistake by choosing work, by pushing you away. But now, I know what really matters. I won't let that happen again. Let's start over, please. Clara sighed deeply, and her eyes softened. Joachim, I want to believe you, but I don't know if it's that simple. Days passed, and Clara decided to give the relationship another chance. They began to build a life together, and for a time, everything seemed perfect. But Joachim started to notice something strange. Small changes in the world around him. People he remembered began to disappear. Memories of events that had never happened began to invade his mind. It was as if, by changing the past, he was undoing reality itself. One night, while Clara slept, Joachim couldn't stop thinking about the clock. He knew that tampering with time had caused these distortions, but he was willing to endure it all to be with her. However, something even more disturbing was yet to come. The next morning, Clara didn't wake up. Joachim tried everything to wake her, but she was cold and lifeless. Desperate, he took her body to the hospital, but the doctors found no cause for her death. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist. Joachim, devastated. This is my fault. I tampered with what I shouldn't have. I lost her again. He returned to his workshop, where the old clock still marked time in reverse. With tears in his eyes, He decided that he needed to undo what he had done. He turned the clock's hands forward, speeding up time until he was back in the present. When time stopped spinning, Joachim found himself once again as an old man in his workshop, alone. The clock was stopped, and the pendulum motionless. He had returned to the starting point, but Clara was definitively lost to him. However, something was different. The workshop door opened, and a young man entered. He looked like Joachim, but younger, with eyes full of determination. "Young man, are you Joachim, the watchmaker?" Joachim, surprised. "Yes, that's me. What do you want?" "Young man, my name is Lucas. I'm your son." Joachim froze. He never knew Clara was pregnant. She never had the chance to tell him. But there was Lucas, the son he never knew. "Lucas, my mother told me about you. She said I should find you one day, and that you would have something important to tell me." Joachim, with tears in his eyes. "Lucas, I didn't know. I never knew." "Lucas, I know, and that's why I'm here. I want to know the truth about who you are, and what happened to my mother." Joachim looked at the old clock and knew that time had finally given him a second chance, not to correct the past, but to face the present with courage. He turned to Lucas and said, "Let's start over, son. I have a lot to tell you." The clock, which had been silent for so long, emitted one last tick-tock, no longer a symbol of regret or a desire for change, but a reminder that time cannot be tamed, only lived. And so, Joachim found redemption, not by tampering with time, but by accepting his place in the timeline of destiny and finally embracing what life had in store for him.